So take it away, Bob.
All righty. Well, as Dennis said, we're going to focus on pen turning, primarily around beginning pen turners. So those of you who have turned pens, please raise your hand. We've got a couple, three of them. Okay, so we're going to be going over some basics, in addition to maybe a couple alternative ways to do some of the steps. So just bear with us as we kind of explain the parts of the lathe and explain what this does and that does. Just bear with us on those of you who are turners. As with anything regarding woodworking, there's probably 150,000 different ways of doing something. What I'm going to show you is how I started, how I learned it, my process, as well as some things I've learned and changed in terms of my process. So, like I say, the good way to start a bar fight is to have two woodworkers go into a bar and talk about turning anything, and they'll soon find that they do things differently. So again, a little bit of my background. I've been working at the Woodsmith store here since 2017. I retired from my career job in 2013 when we moved here to Des Moines. I've been a woodworker my whole life, and actually my first experience that I remember is I was 5 years old. My grandpa took me down into his basement where his workbench was, and he had me hammering nails into a 2x4. And he had me pull the nails out of the 2x4 and then hammering nails back into the 2x4. And he was over in his little alcove in his chair drinking his Ham's beer. So that's my first woodworking experience. Shortly after that, he had a big can of rusty nails, put them out there, and I straightened those nails. So I've been hammering and sawing all my life. My dad was a woodworker as well. So I've been turning since 2022. I always thought it was interesting. I had done mostly flat work, tables and boxes and things of that nature. A guy that used to work here at the Woodsmith store started talking to me about it, as well as Richard, who is a big wood turner here. And they said something that really attracted me to it, and that is a lot of times you're doing your flat work, you're doing your projects. It may be several days from start to completion. I can go out in my shop and then 35 minutes later, I've got my pen done. So it's really kind of a quick gratification. You're able to kind of get that thing in and out. So, and as Norm Abrams says, before we get started, let's talk about shop safety. So you got something here that's going to be spinning several thousand RPM. Things can happen when that's going on. So no loose fitting clothing is generally the rule. I like to wear something with tight, not loose sleeves on it. They would recommend taking off any jewelry. But since this is covering my jewelry, I don't take that off. And then a smock versus a tool belt or a tool vest. And the reason for a couple things, it gives you another layer of protection, but it also comes high around your neck. And that, as you, not necessarily so much with pens, but if you start getting into other kinds of turning, which you will, if you're going to start turning pens, you will start turning other things. It comes up high around the neck, because as you're turning, the shavings are going kind of wherever that blade, your turning tool is headed towards, mostly back at you. So it just prevents that from getting down your neck. So it's good to have a wood turning apron. We've got some here that we sell at the Woodsmith store, obviously. So high neck. This one's more of a vest. I like the 3/4 sleeves. Then a face shield is pretty imperative with wood turning. Richard again tells a story. He was wearing his face shield and he was doing a bowl. He does a lot of segmented bowls, which means you got a lot of glue joints and there's chances of them being kind of weak. He was turning along, had this on, and a chunk just came flying out, worked loose, hit him in this direct face in the face shield. So he said, without this, who knows what would happen? Puts an eye out, big bloody mess on your face. So really, it is important. Safety glasses are better than nothing, but they doesn't protect your face, and that's the thing just to know. Wood is unpredictable. You just never know what's going to happen as you start turning that stuff down. A dust mask is an option. Excuse me. As you see later in the process, we'll be sanding the blank, and that can kick up a lot of dust. I've got a little attachment here that I found really helps with that. So in interest of having to talk, I'm not going to be having my face mask on, but it is recommended once you get into the finishing phase.
So like I always say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
So.
And interesting, as I was preparing for this, it's amazing how many steps you forget that you're doing. And as you can see, there's lots of things involved. There's probably twice as much here because I'm going to show you maybe a couple ways to do things rather than just the way I do it. So along with safety, in the safety vein is sharp tools. And no matter what you're doing with woodworking, one of the most dangerous things you can do is to not have sharp tools. There's a couple different categories of tools that we use. The typical traditional high-speed chisels and skews. I've got some examples over there of that. If you're going to have those kinds of tools, you need a way to keep them sharp. And so typically that's done with a bench grinder. Slow speed, you want around 1750 RPM, unless you're an experienced metal worker. The 3500 and plus, you have a chance of losing the temper on your tools. There are people who do it, but it's usually an experienced guy who knows what they're doing when it comes to sharpening metal. And then along with that, there's some grinding attachments, jigs, that come with that, because the angle of those tools, the angles of the bevels are pretty important. You want them consistent between your sharpenings, or it changes the way your tool interacts with the wood. So a slow speed grinder along with the jigs is recommended if you're going to be using those kinds of chisels. Today we're not going to be using those kinds of chisels. As you start out, we recommend going with carbide tools or carbide insert tools. They're since they are made out of carbide and not high-speed steel, they last a lot longer. They stay sharper a lot longer. And then as they do become dull, you're able to loosen the insert and just rotate it. So you almost get 360 degrees of sharpened surface, as well as 4 different sides if it's a different insert. And as far as those inserts come, they make them in different shapes. They've got squares, and that gives you 4 surfaces, and then they've got negative rake versions of those as well. We'll get into negative rakes and kind of what they do for you. The thing about the carbide tools is they're all pretty much a scraping kind of cut versus a gouge, which is a little bit more of a knife-like cut. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just, you just got to know that's what's happening. You're doing more of a scraping cut than you are doing a knife kind of cut. So there was a little bit of misinformation about sharpening these carbide tips. I just wanted to take you just a small bit of time to kind of go over that. Would help if I put my glasses on. So as you see, they just screw in with a screw. And, you know, they are angled. You see the little bevel on them. People think they have to sharpen the bevel portion of it, but what you actually do is you turn it upside down so that the top is on the stone. Put a little bit of cutting fluid. It can be anything for the fluid, but, and then basically what you do is you spend about 30 to 45 seconds just rubbing this down and sharpening. Basically what you're doing is creating a new edge by bringing the flat surface up to the bevel surface. As you can see, we're developing a little bit of a slurry down there. It's turning black. That stuff is turning black, so that means you are cutting. Again, these are diamond plates. I should have mentioned that to begin with. We sell these, again, at the store. This was just a little thing I made. Any of you follow Paul Sellers? There you go. This is my version of his little attachment. He made it out of plywood, which I did first, but it got all skunky on me and started to delaminate. So I did this with a more of a plastic-based material. So as you're going to be able to see, there should be scratch patterns on there that let you know that that's nice and flat. And again, since your cutting surface is that point, and whether you cut the bevel or you cut the flat part, it's going to create a new edge for you and be sharp. So, and that saves a little money for you. You can sharpen these things. So again, thanks to Richard for having that. Yeah, any questions you got along the way on this stuff, just please feel free to raise your hand and we'll see what we can do about that. The Rikon set that we have here, the carbides have a little mark on them, so you can kind of tell where they are, and as you rotate it, you just keep track of where that mark is. So there we go. And so the set comes with one handle and 3 of these extensions and the 3 tips. So it's a good way to start without having to also buy a grinder on top of your tools. So again, the diamond plates are not that expensive. And this is a fine diamond plate that I used. I've got medium, fine, and super fine, and I use the fine one for sharpening those. So any questions on that? No questions. Good deal. Oh, yes. Always clean the slurry. You can leave little bits of carbide in there that over time will rust on you, so you don't want to do that. So I can go ahead and move this guy out of the way. So let's talk about the equipment. I'm going to kind of list the equipment that typically you'll need, and again, maybe some alternatives. Obviously, you're going to need a lathe, so we'll talk about that. A pen mandrel, which again we'll get into, and that's what you basically mount the blanks onto for your turning, along with a live center at the other end. Again, we'll go over the lathe parts here in just a little bit. Chisels, we've talked about those, or tools. Drill press for drilling the blanks, and or a drill chuck, and attach a regular chuck for drilling using your lathe for drilling, and we'll go over that. That's the method we'll be using today. If you do use a drill press, there's a thing called a centering vise. We can talk about that kind of quickly here. The centering vise.
Would you just bring that? Oh, my cord isn't quite long enough. So
all right.
Thanks.
So again, we'll get into cutting the pen blank down, but after you cut the pen blank down, you would put this in the centering vise. The centering vise has these V grooves in it that keeps the pen blank vertical, and that's the thing. You just want to make sure that that drilled hole is as close to the center as you can keep it. as you, especially on longer drills, you know, this isn't just a little 1/8 inch or 1/2 inch hole you're drilling. You're drilling usually over a couple of inches, and the chance for your bit to wander increases as the length goes and as well as the hardness of your wood is. So if you're drilling into hardwood and the heat's building up, you know, it can all of a sudden come out the side of the blank versus coming out the center of the blank. So having a firm way to hold that is really kind of important. So if you're going to be using a vise to do it, you can't really hold it by hand, or you use another clamp to hold it. It just wanders too much. So it's really recommended to have a good pen vise, blank vise to augment that with. Then there's all sorts of gadgets that we'll be talking about. There's a pen insertion tool, so we can get into the gluing of it. A barrel trimmer or a disc sander for squaring the blanks. You've got all sorts of bushings and sandpaper and shop towels and all the standard stuff that you'll kind of need to accommodate your work. And then pressing. Boy, I didn't bring one. So when you get to the assembly, you'll need a way to press these pieces together. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the kits. There's a pressing assembly tool that you can buy or you can use. I switched to the lathe to use my lathe to do it. So I should probably back up and say I used to have all these different stations set up. I've gone to the point where I try to do as much on the lathe as I can. May cause me to switch out the tools more, but I find it's just more efficient for my workflow to try and do as much as possible on the lathe. Then the other thing about equipment is, as you see, especially from here on, there's lots of things going on. And over to the right over there, you'll see a couple little cases. They're just kind of tackle box cases. As you get into the parts of the pen and the bushings and stuff that you're going to need, if you make more than one, the more kinds of pen kits that you buy, you're going to have all sorts of bushings. Kind of need a way to organize them, and that I've come up with this method of organizing my my bushings especially, but all the other little bits and pieces you need. I bought these little tubes, and I think these are 1/2 inch tubes with the blue caps on it. I keep the package description and then just put some tape on them, and then they hold all my bushings. I've got sets for everything, so you just put your bushings in there, keeps them organized, keeps them from being in a drawer. Like, what is the size of that bushing? This, again, this is the way my shop is set up. I've got half the size of this room as my shop, so I'm always looking for places to maximize my storage. So they have different kinds of kits. It's as many and varied as people just come up and think about. There's a couple different categories. There's click pens, twist pens, bolt action pens, as well as pencils along the same lines. They'll come in different diameters. So you'll have a real skinny 7mm, and we can show that. That's called a slim line. And it's one of the least expensive kits that we carry, and we'll talk about selection here in just a little bit. And then you can go up to what's called a magnetic roller ball, which has got a lot of heft to it. And the kits, as they vary in size and quantity, or diameter and quality, they go from $4 a kit all the way. You can spend $75 to $100 on a pen kit on some of the boutique websites out there. So they tend to be more along the lines where people are making their own components for like ink, the old style scrib type of pens. And in terms of the click, we just wanted to make a note on the click. This is a pen kit we sell here. The click mechanism on the inside, there's a couple different levels of quality. One's a plastic, which you're going to find on most pens. The higher end pen kits have what they call a Schmidt mechanism, which is a all metal pens. They're made in Germany, all metal engines. They're all made in Germany. So you might see some variance in there. Why is that click pen kit so high? We'll check and see if it's got a Schmidt mechanism. That's really an issue in terms of when you start assembling these. If you kind of make a mistake on the assemblage, you might damage the plastic one easier than the metal one. Just ask me how I know. So you'll see single tubes and double tubes, and I've shown you single tubes. The twist pens are all really double tubes. You've got the top and then the bottom, and obviously that's to accommodate the twist action for you. Different finishes: chrome, black, gunmetal. That happens to be one of my favorite. Gold. Couple other boutique finishes, but all of those make up choices that decision points for you to make your choices, and it's really up to you. What kind of pen are you looking for? If it's a gift, you might want to kick it up a little bit. I would say in starting, there's kind of two trains of thought. I started out with the slimlines at the recommendation of Tom, the guy I was talking to about it. He says, here's the deal with slimlines. You have to turn them down to pretty small diameter, which is sometimes challenging. But if you wreck the kit, it's only $4. Versus if you start out on a $15 kit or an $18 kit, you might get a catch, it blows up on you, and there's no way of salvaging. You're out $20 on a 15 to $20 on a kit. So I would kind of follow that advice for starting wood printers. Is just kind of start with those slim lines. Develop your technique, get comfortable with what you're doing, and then kind of move on to the next categories of pens. So that gets us into blanks, which if there's wood, you can make a blank out of it. Just anything. My story on the blanks is, so this was the very first pen I ever made, and this is made from if you can believe it, walnut. You can see the sapwood on the top. And that came from a tree that my uncle cut down 35 years ago, and he had like 900 board feet of walnut that I got 850 board feet of free walnut from my uncle. So lots of pieces and parts. When you start working with that stuff, it's all rough sawn. So I made a pen out of that. And then this was kind of the second batch I made. This is that Vertex click pen. As you can see, there's some really wonderful figure in there. And I, after he passed away, I made a whole bunch of pens for his family. And it just kind of has a nice little memory of Uncle Jerry, and came from his backyard. If you got a branch out in your backyard, you can literally just go out there and start with a branch. It may be a little wet, bring it in, let it dry a couple months. You can literally turn anything if it's got some meaning to you.
Let me interject here for just a moment there. That last one you showed, where does that fit in the range of price?
I think that's around a $10 to $12 kit.
Oh, that's cool. It just attracted me, so I'm asking questions.
Yeah, and then, thank you. And then obviously you can get into, so this is exotic. This is a thuya burl. We'll actually be using thuya today. I love that wood. It just turns like butter. Same with olive wood. Olive wood just turns like butter as well. So as you're starting out, probably good turn easy wood. The harder woods, like, even the standard cherries and, maple, they can be tougher to turn. So, and this is a piece of desert ironwood. This is really hard. Again, that can prevent some challenges. And then you can get into the acrylic blanks. This is one I actually made from bits and pieces of burl that I had laying around. Rockler makes a kit where you can pour your own. This is epoxy with this. Then there's all sorts of blanks that are in this fashion. This is a spalted tamarind that's been stabilized. And over on the sample display over there, you'll see some other ones. The kit that's got the looking glass and the pen kit and the letter opener is a acrylic blank. Some pretty striking stuff can be done with that. Personal preference, which blanks go with which color kits. Personal preference. I'm kind of a big fan of the gunmetal kits. I think they fit more of a broader spectrum of colored woods. Some people make everything using the gold kits. So again, it's your design. There's really no right and wrong concerning that. All right, so I think we've laid the groundwork.
All right.
All right. So need a drink of coffee.
I don't know. There you go.
All right.
Of your finishes, which ones hold up the best?
Excuse me?
Of your finishes, your gold, your gunmetal, whatever, are certain ones hold up better than others?
I haven't found that. They're all plated, and I mean, I've got, like I say, this pen is 2 years old and it's daily use, and it's gold, and I've got that click pen, keep that at home, daily use, and it's the gunmetal. I have not noticed any difference in the finishes holding up. So, yeah, good question. So let's talk about the kits in terms of how they come. So typically they'll come in a bag. We get ours from Penn State. There's all sorts of pen kit suppliers out there. In the kit, the pieces and the components will be usually individually bagged. You've got all of the stuff in there that you're going to need. So rather than you watching me painstakingly go through and unwrapping all of those pieces and parts, by the magic of preparation, I've gone ahead and done that for us. So
I think if you go on the website, there's pretty accurate descriptions of everything too. I did that a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure that I covered about everything. So you'd be able to see all the parts of a pen.
Yep. And so one of the things I like to do, my shop is so small, my bench is always full of stuff, and my working area is not much bigger than this. I started using this little tray business. You can use a paper towel, you can use whatever you want, but I like this. As you can see, these things kind of roll around. After spending many times picking up parts underneath my bench because it rolled off the edge, I've gone to kind of pre-organizing the kit, laying it out kind of in order of what's going to be the final assembly, putting the bushings I'm going to need over here, and then I tend to use a lot of these little pre-cut squares of shop towels throughout many of the processes as we go along. And in addition to that, you have to pardon me, most of my stuff is kind of right around me. A pen insertion tool, we talked about that. And where this comes into play is when you glue it, which is one of the first steps. You glue, after preparing the blank, you glue the tube into the blank. And that just helps you handle it a little bit better. Some people make their own by making a tapered jowl, using their lathe to make a tapered jowl, dowel. But it just kind of helps you holding it on. And it's especially important with CA glue. If you do a CA finish, we'll talk about finishes later. CA glue is not instant cure, but you don't got a lot of time to work with it. You're talking less than 30 seconds usually before it starts to seize on you. So if you use CA, which I will not be using today, and we'll go why in a little bit. But the pen insertion tool helps with assembling that, and then your glue. Again, you can use CA. You can use two-part epoxy. I'm not going to show the brand because we don't sell this. So, yeah, we sell the Stick Fast brand here, which is the same. And in defense of myself, we were shut down for about 4 months during the move, and I needed some two-part epoxy. So I had to get it from someplace else.
Oh, yeah, I knew somehow I was responsible.
Yeah,
I
you
just
were.
didn't know how.
Dennis just kind of kept saying you can't open yet. So anyway, so two-part epoxy. You can also use Gorilla Glue. The warning about Gorilla Glue is it takes at least 12 hours to cure. The other thing it does is it expands. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I used it once because I had a pen disaster happen, and I had to disassemble it all. And in the disassemblage, I kind of resanded the tube. I wanted to reuse everything. The reason I just didn't go out and pick a new tube up was because it was the weekend and there was no place available, and we didn't have the tube here. So I ended up sanding this down. Well, it changes the diameter ever so slightly. We're talking about fits of, 0.01. Well, that 0.1 became bigger, or 0.15. You don't think it makes much of a difference, but that blank was just rattling around in the hole. So I used Gorilla Glue. Had to wait till the next day, and sure enough, it just expanded around it. It worked well. So it's kind of situational. I don't like waiting when I'm doing pens. I want to get in and want to get it done. So I don't use Gorilla Glue, except in that one particular case I did. So, any question? Okay.
Did you ever use CA with accelerators?
Excuse me?
Did you ever use the CA glues with accelerators?
I do. I have. I tend not to use them anymore. I tend to use 5-minute epoxy. And one of the reasons is when you're, the reason I do it, I should say, so you're going through the process, which we'll go through, of prepping the blank, right? You size the blank, you drill the blank, and square it off. When you're drilling the blank, you're generating heat, and that blank will heat up. And if you're really in a hurry and you forget that you should let the blank cool down, you put CA glue on it, you start inserting that, bam, it seizes on you halfway through. So you get the blank, halfway into the, or the tube halfway into the blank, and it's stuck because it's CA glue and it ain't gonna go apart. So I had that happen to me on several occasions, and I just kind of said, yeah, I'm not going to use that anymore. So different wood takes different. This is thuya, really hard, really dense. It could take 10 minutes for that blank to cool down on the inside, because heat's generated on the inside and works its way out. If you grab the blank and you feel it's hot, you gotta let it cool down before you do this. If you're using CA glue, if you're using 5-part epoxy, I don't have to wait. So, answer your question? Yeah. I used it a lot when I started out, but after having the grab on me and seize on me, I just stopped doing that. So, so sizing the blank, let's get into that. So you'll start with a blank this long, typically 5 to 6 inches, anywhere from 5/8 square up to an inch square, depends on the place where you're getting it from. Typically ours are 3/4, 13/16 kind of square. So what we do is you take the blank and you put it about a 1/16 inch of away from the one end of the blank, and then you draw a line or mark about a 1/16 of an inch away on the other end. And then I always like to draw a line, so it helps when I'm cutting it. I use a bandsaw to cut mine. You can use a handsaw. Don't need to use a table saw. That's overkill for cutting something this small. I do know guys who are production pen turners, and they'll use their table saw because they'll just whack out 100 blanks, you know, on the table saw. But typically it's one at a time. So you would then take this over to the bandsaw, and by the magic of preparation, we've done that. So we have now cut the blank. So again, it should be just slightly longer. How are we doing there?
There we go.
The blank should be slightly longer than the tube, and we'll get into why that needs to be. So once we do that, you find the center of the blank. I ended up working a lot more down here than I told you I was, didn't I?
I guess, man. Between you and Kevin, you're always taking over the shop.
Yeah. So you find the center of the tube or the blank. Oop. And this is a nice little center finder that I found online. I like it because of its size for doing pens. Now I do all four edges, and I'll show you why in a minute. As much as they tell you it's a square blank, it ain't. So as you see, there's a couple of lines, and then what you do is take your center punch, find the center, and pop a little dimple in there. So center punch is good. You don't have to have one. You can use a nail if you want, but center punch does. So that's we sized the blank, we squared the blank, which we've done with the Thuya burl as well. So as you can see, I've done the same thing with the Thuya burl. I can get a close up of that. This is why I like Thuya a lot. It's wonderful. It has an interesting odor to it. Yeah, I want to make sure I didn't mess that up.
Are the burls like I call them like tree warts, things that grow out of the trees? Like,
excuse me?
You ever see those trees like in Beaverdale and stuff that have these like wart-looking things coming out?
Yeah. That's what burls are, usually the growth on a.
Do you sell those here too?
We've got some.
Okay.
We've got some, but we sell these blanks here.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and we've got several burl style blanks out there, but they're if you go to where the pen turning kits are right here, if you go on to the end cap, down at the bottom shelf, there's some burl. I think it's apple burl down there, and you can cut that up and use it in the pens. I bought a couple of pieces and made handles out of them for like the pie server you see over there. That's made out of mahogany, but I made a bunch of them with that apple burl, and it's really cool stuff.
Okay.
So in terms of drilling the hole, again, I showed you there, if you're going to use a drill press, you really need to have something to hold that thing so it's nice and perfectly in line with your drill press. Make sure your drill press is square to your table and all that good stuff. So I did that for a long time. I had some trouble with blowouts again. And I think there was just enough play in in the vise that I wasn't probably doing it correctly. And so again, I've switched back to the lathe. And in terms of what do you use on the lathe to drill your blanks? Well, you got to have a chuck on the headstock. And this has got what they call pin jaws in it, or pen jaws. You may see them either 2 jaw configurations or 4 jaw configurations. And the reason I like the 4 jaw configuration is because when you put your pen blanks into it, the corners fit through, and it just secures. I feel it secures it much better. So now's probably a good time to talk about the lathe. So you got the headstock, which is the business end. It's where the drive spindle is. There's usually a set of pulleys attached to a motor that drive the spindle. The spindle will have a threaded portion of it. Typically it's 1 inch by 8 TPI. That's important to know because the chucks come in different sizes. The other common size is 1.25 inches by 8 TPI. Or the larger lathes we have out there have the larger chuck. But by and far, the majority of mini lathes will be 1 inch by 8 TPI. Older Craftsman lathes are 3/4 inch. Don't see those much anymore, but every now and again a guy brings in something that's got that 3/4 inch. We've got things we can do to work with that. So threading it on like that, and then most lathes have a way of locking the lathe. He says as he looks to lock the lathe. There we go. So now that lathe can't turn, and you want to then secure the chuck with just kind of one little twist. You kind of don't need to do this because of the way the rotation of the lathe, but I always like to make sure it is so that it's fully engaged and not going to be wobbling around at all. So always remember to unlock it. And then when I put the blank in, I always make sure to bottom the blank out against the back end of the vise or the chuck. That way you know you're pretty parallel to everything. And then just tighten it down. And I always like to tighten down both, just like you do on a bench press or a drill press. You want to tighten down in multiple locations. And then I usually test to see how that looks. I can see the center looking pretty good, so that's pretty well squared. Not critical to be perfect, but you want it pretty close. Okay, now on the other end, the tailstock, it's where you mount the mating components of whatever step it is that you're doing. In our case, we're going to be drilling. So in this end, there's a thing called a Morse taper. And the mating parts, as you can see, it's just slightly tapered down. And those tapers are Morse taper 1, Morse taper 2, Morse taper 3, Morse taper 4. You get into the bigger machines, those are higher numbers. Again, 80 to 85 to 90% are going to be Morse taper 2, or MT2 you'll hear it called. So in this particular case, that's what this is. There is, I bought a lathe that had Morse taper 1 on it, pretty small for pen turning initially. I now got a Laguna 1216. It's got a Morse taper 2 with a 1 inch by 8 TPI headstock. So the headstock also has a Morse taper in it, and we'll show you that here in just a little bit. But so to get this to seat, you know, you want to make sure it's in there, so just give it a pop. And to take it out, all you got to do is back the headstock or back the tailstock out. You don't have to knock it. There's a way to knock it loose, but with a tailstock you don't have to do that. So That's in there nice. I really like this chuck. It's a keyless chuck. We don't sell these. We need to.
Well, I would be saying I should.
I need your help.
Okay.
Kim's supposed to be here. This is one of those things that we need to stock these. So, in terms of adjusting the tailstock, there's a lock for where it attaches to the bed or ways. That's another component. Lathe is the ways, W-A-Y-S or Z or W-A-Z-E. Seen it spelled lots of different ways. And that's just really the surface that you slide your tailstock on, as well as attach your banjo and tool rest to. So for me, I just take and get it as close to the stock as I can. And in a lot of cases, you're supposed to lock the tailstock down, but in this particular case, we're actually going to be using this as a drill. So you don't walk the spindle down here. And I think we're ready to drill.
You ready to drill?
I think we are.
You ready?
We're going to see chips fly.
Oh, buddy.
So what I'll be doing is I'll be, advancing it. I'll be drawing it out just like you normally do, trying to prevent heat buildup. My lathe speed is going to be as low, 600, 800, doesn't need to be up there 1,000 or so. Just nice, slow speed, help prevent heat buildup. So, and we turn. I'd also like to hold this just in case it works out a little bit. Smell it?
I can.
Yeah. Some people think it smells like things distasteful. I can't say the words in public, but
I did last week.
yeah. Well, actually, it's cat pee. It smells like. I don't think it smells that way.
No, I don't either.
But I'm not a cat guy, so I don't know. So let me stop this. And then, so the things I also do is I'll have a little brush sometimes just to help clear out the chips, keep them cleared out. Again, all that does is the more chip stays in there, the hotter the blanks get. Now we are at the end of the travel here, but we're not the end of the blank. So, and when you hear the squealing like that a little bit, that means it's kind of out around just a teeny bit. Again, this is a long blank, it's a long bit, so you're going to get a little bit of a wobble, not much. So then, I like to bottom that out and advance from here. Usually only takes moving that once. Now you can get really, really long bits to do this. I bought one of those, but I just found there was too much play at the end of it. I mean, you're out there 5 or 6 inches, and I just wasn't comfortable with that. So hopefully we'll get through here. You should be able to feel it coming through the other end. I should have said something about the kind of bit I use. I like to use the brad point bits. I think it cuts through the other side better. I know this is kind of like watching paint dry, but there's just some tips and tricks to doing this on the lathe, and we're through. So. So as you can see, that's one end, that's the other, stayed nice and centered. So I've never had one not do this using the lathe. That's why I like to use the lathe. So versus that guy, and it's probably process more than anything, but I've just had too much problems the other way. Yes,
Hey Bob, do you have to worry about chip out when it comes out at the end?
that's a great question. More so on the acrylics. I've had problems with that. Typically on the wood, using a brad point and using this, I've not really had much of a chip out. As you can tell, this is really hardwood, and sometimes you get chip out on that kind of stuff. Softer wood, I've really never had a chip out on it. So your mileage may vary, but for me, this has kind of been the way it is. It's worked. Now, I'd pass this around, but by the time you guys got it back, you wouldn't feel that it's warm. It's warm. So for me, I would wait probably 5 minutes before I would glue it if I'm using CA. Well, let's go ahead and glue one. Since I'm not using CA, we'll go ahead and glue one up. 2-part epoxy. Don't need much. About equal amounts. I usually use about a little less than a dime's worth on each. Should be relatively.
Pretty much a visual on that, right?
Yep. Relatively easy. It's unlike epoxy. You don't have to mix it for 5 minutes or 8 minutes. It's just enough to get it mixed. And since you got 5 minutes work time, you don't really have to rush this stuff. But as you can see, I'm using a popsicle stick. I'm putting primarily most of it on the middle. And we'll show you why here in a minute. Again, this is just my process. What I found, I want to kind of minimize the amount I have left over because the stuff's messy. And I end up having it in places I never intended to have it. So I want to minimize that. So again, this pen insertion tool, there's no glue there, which is another reason I leave the ends. And you twist it as you're going. I get it about that far, turn it around, and do the other end. And take and remove that. What you're trying to avoid here is getting any of that glue inside the tube. You just don't want any of that stuff in there. There's ways of getting it out. But then the other thing, I know you pick that up. You see about how far away that is there? It should be about equal on both ends. Yeah, that's what you're shooting for. And it'll slide around a little bit. So, we'll be using a lot of this guy. Was at a hospital or a clinic one time, and I'm seeing the nurse do this. I'm going, I could use that. So, whoops. Just clean off the ends. Again, you'll grab it and you'll forget that it's got wet glue on the end. So I just like to use something to clean it up, any off the edges. And what I use is isopropyl alcohol. I don't use denatured for the stuff I'm doing on pens. And the reason I like doing it, it flashes off so fast. I use 99% isopropyl. Bam, it's dry. I mean, it's already gone. So that's what I like using, isopropyl. All right. And then, this is a clean shop is a happy shop. So, clean up after yourself as you go. Those of us with OCD, thank you, right? So, we're done with that. So, again, we would normally let that dry for at least 5 minutes. I typically go 15. I like to do that. And through the magic of preparation, we've gone ahead and done that, not only with one, but two blanks. So this is another Thulia blank. So the next step is squaring the blank. And that's important because as you mount these things to press these things in, if it's not blank, you're just going to have just ever such slightly, I don't know if you can see that or not, ever so slightly, I'm exaggerating, but you just may not have a nice match. It'll be one of those things, every time you pick that pen up, you look at it and go, dang, it wasn't square. You'll just a little defect you kind of want to avoid. So you want the pen perfectly square, the tube perfectly square with the length, the end squared with the length. So there's several ways of doing that, of course. And one of those ways is with a barrel trimmer. We sell these here. I would say for most of the domestic blanks, you're going to be fine. If you start getting into some pretty figured wood, it can prevent an issue. But basically, it's a cutter. As you see, it's got these cutters, and so it's perfectly square to the shaft, and there's different size inserts depending upon what size tube you're working. So you'll see in the in here the kit that we sell has several, as we'll just show you, several different sized tubes and or sleeves depending upon what size pen you're using. So, under normal circumstances, good point here, you do not want to use a drill press to hold this. And the reason is, your drill press is fighting for control of perpendicularity, and your perpendicularity should be driven by this, not your drill press. So you can put it in a bench vise, that's fine. But basically you put that in there and you spin it, and that's going to square the blank. So that little distance that you've got off the end between the tube and the blank, you're trying to remove that. And you remove that in a fashion so that you're ending up with a surface that's perpendicular to the tube. So I'm not going to do this. I see people online doing it by hands all the time. I rip my hand up pretty good doing that, so I do not recommend doing that. Put it upright in a bench vise and go ahead and do it. Steady is the way. Slower speed is the way. Again, I've blown up blanks with highly figured woods using this. So I've switched to a different method. This is good. I mean, I don't want to give you the impression that these aren't good methods, but what I've done is use a sander to do this with. Make sure that everything is nice and square on this. I'm just motoring along.
Are you going to use the disc?
Yeah.
You want me to move that?
So we glued the tube. Okay, so we're now at squaring the blank. So typically all you do with this method is you just keep working this, and I tend to rotate it as I'm working it, and just to remove that little bit that's left. And you'll know, there's a couple of ways you'll know. You can kind of hear it. You can kind of hear when you're hitting that brass tube. Even my hearing aids pick it up, so I can kind of hear that. And then check it frequently, and once the end of the blank is, or when the end of the tube is shiny, you know you've gone enough. Don't go any farther. The reason is you don't want to shorten that tube because the mechanisms are sometimes size reliant, especially the twist pens. Clicks, not so much, but a little bit less, but it's really, you don't want to shorten that tube. So that's the method we're going to be using today. let me show you what else I came up with. Because I don't have one of those. Oops. This is not normally the lathe I use. This is the Kama 14DR, by the way, which is a really, really nice entry-level lathe. It's got a little extra length to it, which I like. So what I have at my house and we don't sell one of these things, so sorry. Took a piece of melamine, obviously the melamine's out here, 6 inches, attached it to a faceplate. And that spins. But the magic is provided by this guy. I belong to the International Association of Wood Turners, PenTurners, I should say. They've got a website. And they've got a guy on there who makes all sorts of gadgets and gadgets. And much like Dennis, I get sucked into this stuff. So if it's a gadget and it helps my process. So basically what you do with this setup, gotta keep away from that. And usually it takes me a while to set it up, and so all the time my blank is curing, and so as I'm doing the transition, usually by the time I get it all set up, I can go ahead and square the blank up. So what you do is you bring this close, just like this, lock it down, and then you just sand it, right? You do the sanding thing. Again, I'm not going to do the whole thing with this, simply because this isn't kind of what people do out of the gate. You know, it's probably another $40, $50 gadget by the time you look at it. You don't need it. If you've got a, you can use the trimmer, the barrel trimmer to do this, or again, I like the sanding method more. Now it's going to get noisy here, so we're going to fire this up, and the vac is going to go.
You want me to bring that dust collection around?
That should. Whoa! Do we got another tube over there? We do.
Yeah, I'll just
Alrighty.
hold it.
Are we ready?
Yep.
All right. How many?
15.
Too long. As you can see, it's starting to shine the end of the tube. It's not done yet because that's not. So that's why it's important to square this blank. So we'll continue this on here. And I'll just go ahead and finish it. As you see, I'm pulling it back, checking it, pulling it away from the surface, especially because this is a higher speed sander. So it's going to generate a lot of heat, and I'm trying to avoid that. See that? Isn't more meat on this one. One more. Perfect. Cut. Thank you. So, this one's been squared, this one hasn't, obviously. But if you also notice the corners are knocked off, that's another thing I do. I'll take it to my bandsaw. I've got a little jig made that I can just knock. It's got a 45-degree holder in it. I can just take and knock off those corners. Why is that important? It's not critical, but some wood just chips. Crazy. And especially if you're using acrylic blanks, if you catch the edge wrong on an acrylic blank, it just crack it all the way through. So the closer you can kind of get it to that round shape, the better, for me, the better experience I've been having. So again, this blank we're going to turn anyway. So all right, see my notes, see what else. I think I covered all that. And after all this, we're actually going to get to turn the blank. So, and as you'll see, it ain't going to take long. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time finishing. So the turning of the blank is really probably one of the shortest things that that you do. So again, I'll get the get things set up. Come on. Alrighty, so pen mandrel. So this is what you'll see with the pen mandrel, many different sizes and varieties. Less than $30 to a woodpecker, of course, makes one for $189.99. There's different styles. This is a non-compression, so it's pretty much the shaft or the mandrel portion is the fixed. They have compression mandrels where you have to actually tighten it. The nice thing about the compression is you can adjust the length. You kind of want it shorter, as short as you can get it, because otherwise you're not out here, wobbling away with run out. And then on the other end, this is kind of dimpled. As you can see, the dimple has kind of been worn away on mine, but I don't, and that's supposed to fit in to your live center. That end goes in here. Again, mine's kind of worn away, doesn't do that. One of the things I highly recommend anyway is not to use that. So again, there's 2 Morris taper onto the headstock as well. That fits in there, and it will get tightened up even more so. Some people do this off lathe. I do it on lathe. You put the bushing here. You put the blank over it. Next bushing goes into it. If this was a 2-part pen, there'll be 3 bushings, 1 on each end and 1 in the middle. What the bushings are used for is you size your pen turning. You get it down to that size. Some guys don't even use bushings anymore. They just use a micrometer. They know what the pen kit will give you sizes onto it. So they just use a mic. And they'll turn it down there, use the mic to check it. In terms of the shape, just remember that ultimately this needs to fit the hand. I've seen some pens just kind of go crazy shapes. I go, how are you going to hold on that to write? You know, so a lot of times they may have a bow to them. I typically am more of a straight pen turner. Don't have a lot of shape to my pens. I like the wood to show off versus the shape showing off. So what do we use to hold this in? Dennis?
Yes.
We use a mandrel saver. Now, if we weren't using a mandrel saver, the stock would be out here, right? And we're only turning down here. So all this is going to play a little bit. So the mandrel saver eliminates a lot of that. And you bring it up to there. The other thing it does, again, if you're out here, apologize fit, and pressing, as you press, which you're going to need to put some pressure on it, your mandrel can bow. It can bow out, and you bend your mandrel, then you got to come back to the wood smooth board and buy another mandrel. So we don't want you to have to do that.
Well, that's nice of you, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, we watching out for the customer. So the mandrel saver prevents that from happening. So you just kind of get it close, and then you apply enough pressure. You just kind of feel the pressure. Don't over crank it at this point. Just snug it. And then here's where you do lock this down. So position the banjo so it's kind of centered. Lock the banjo down. Bring the tool rest up. And where do you position that tool rest? So right now that's a little high. You might want to try coming down on it, to the side if you can. I don't know if you can catch that. But if you see the bevels hitting rather than the cutting edge, this is a little high. I mean, you can change that by lifting your arm, but you don't want to do that. So just lower it. I typically like to be just slightly below the center. That was a little bit too much. That's to me just about right. You know, my arms are okay. The cutting motion we do, again, if we were doing shapes, sometimes you do, coves and you do rounds. You know, you're moving kind of like this with your arms. But with the straight cuts, you're basically trying to work as a movement, as a unit. So you just get that thing positioned correctly. And I think we're ready to cut.
Okie dokie, Smokey.
What do you think?
You just go and I'll
Okay.
just move around.
So lathe speed again, for the rough cut, until I get down to round, I usually like around 800 RPM, typically. Depends on the wood. This is a touchy one. Yeah, so we're about 900 RPM. Now you see that the blank stop there. That means I gotta just crank it just a little bit more. Again, just slightly, don't overdo it. Since this is so figured, it doesn't surprise me that it's going to catch. And since we're not fully circled, you notice we're not really kind of making shavings, we're making chippings. That's because we're just catching the corners here. So I doubt we're going to make much shavings with this wood anyway because it's so figured. So and then I'm doing both a pull and a push cut. Now you can tell you're round, you kind of lay the tool on top of it, you're not hopping around, you know you're round. We can go ahead and crank it up, get a little bit more efficient cut. I'm about a little too much. It's touchy. About 1200 is fine. So as I get closer to those bushings, I like to try to come in from the ends and work my way in. So I cut a little bit deeper, and then that gives me a guide to be able to kind of to draw it across. And what I watch for is the top edge. I don't really look at the cutting edge. I look at the top of the blank. That lets me know what my shape is. So we should be able to get this turned down here just real quickly. Real light touch here. If you want to gouge your blanks or your bushings.
Dramatic effect. B-roll.
Let's see where we are. So I usually take my fingernail, see how close I am there. Pretty good. I'll take just a little more down from this.
Is the idea to be flush?
Yeah,
Flush?
yeah. You want to be flush with that bearing,
Oh, okay.
or bushing, excuse me. Doesn't have to be perfect, and we'll go over that in the next step. Sandpaper could cure all evils. So there we go. As you can see, we spent a lot of time getting ready for that, and not a whole lot of time of doing it. So, all right. Now at this point, if you're going to use, let's talk about finishes. So, if you're going to use a CA finish at this point, you would take, you'll sand first, and we'll do that, but you got to be thinking ahead sometimes, a couple of steps. You would take these bushings off and use non-stick bushings. Where's my non-stick bushings? I know I packed them. What'd you do with them, Dennis?
I took them home.
Oh, okay.
I don't turn pins, but
We'll show them to you later, but since we're not going to be demonstrating it. But they're basically Delron bushings that are angled, and they prevent the CA glue from gluing your bushings to your blank. So they don't hold that. And I usually use one kind of final step to kind of check this. You know, figured wood presents a whole lot of challenges. But again, sandpaper is something that really is your friend at this point. So I'll try to move this out of the way. And we'll go to sandpaper. So typically you'll see this used. There's 150, 240, 320, 400, and 600. We sell these here. Come in strips. What you start with depends on the wood. You know, if you got really soft wood, I'll start at 250, and then especially if you've got a relatively smooth surface, and you've done a good job. I've seen guys turn pens with skew chisels, and their surfaces are just absolutely immaculate. And they start up around 320, but 240, 320, 400, and 600 is typically the grits you take it up to. Even if it's an acrylic blank, with acrylic blank you even go farther. You take it up to 5 or 12,000 grit. But we're just going to be doing this finish here. Just requires us to go up to 600. Now this is a hot breaking news, fresh off the press. So as you sand this, sanding is a process of making scratches smaller and smaller, hiding the previous scratches and making new scratches, but smaller until you get to the point where you can't see the scratches anymore. Well, with a pen, you're making circular scratches. Well, then you have to sand longitudinally and remove those scratches. Then do the same thing with the next grit, circle and then longitudinally. And takes a while. This is for bowl turning, and as you can see, that head turns. And I'm going to do some of the blank the traditional way, and then I'm going to do it with this, and you can kind of see the difference. I have found that you have less sanding that you end up having to do by hand by using this. So, just my take. I've never seen anybody do it even online. So.
Whoa!
Could be late. We could go viral.
Oh, buddy,
What do you
you're
think?
gonna break the internet.
Yeah. All right, so we'll start with, I'm going to do a 150, but this is another piece of equipment I would highly recommend. And as you noticed, I did not put my shield on, and I apologize for that profusely. But,
Do those shields fit over regular eyeglasses?
yeah. Matter of fact, pretend I'm turning. Yep, you're fine. So, I use this primarily for sanding. As you can tell, most of your chips, when you're turning, end up back here. They don't end up back here. But this does a great job of taking that really fine dust and not putting it into the air. So this is just a wonderful attachment. We have another one that's freestanding, stands up behind, that we sell. We can get these, so we can order these. I prefer this one, just the way my shop is set up. But this is also where I tend to use my light more, starting from here. As you can see, you can start to see some of those irregularities in the circle rings. Yeah, the side light is really better for that. So I'm going to be turning that guy on, so excuse the noise. I don't want to put dust on you guys. Sanding around 1500 is what I start with. So as you can see the kind of the circular scratches that are developed. So again, I take my friend the isopropyl alcohol, I clean that off, lets me get a better look at it. Again, this is where you do the final sizing to the bushings. You can get it right nice and flush. Need to take down just a little bit more, so you might do a lot more at the lower grit if you're doing a lot of sizing So this is where you do the longitudinal work. And there's parts of this burl that are soft and there's parts of this burl that are hard, so yeah, pretty good. And you see why I like using the alcohol.
Absolutely.
It just burns off really quick. And maybe this is the obsessive compulsive part of me, but there's nothing I hate worse than getting everything all finished up and you hold it up to the light and you see a circular ring. There we go. All right, now I'm going to switch over to the other because I think it goes quicker. And same grits. I started with a 150. We'll go up to go up to a 240. You'll kind of see the difference with the pattern that's left on here. So you can see there's really no circular, there's more angular on that, and it tends to hide, in, especially in a piece of burl like this. Looking pretty good. I'll still do a little bit of longitudinal sanding just to ease my own mind. Alrighty, we'll go up to 320. And we sell these discs here, like I said, so. Oh, don't forget the dust. And by the time you're getting up around 400 to 600, you're really burnishing. You're not sanding anymore. So, like I say, it's just a process of removing one set of scratches for a new set of scratches. It's looking pretty good. All right. Next. Oop.
So there's not a lot of long-winded sanding going on here, is
Yeah.
there? And if we weren't trying to demo this, this would go by pretty darn quickly.
It would, although again, I tend to spend more time on finishing.
Sure,
So
sure.
but you're right. It's looking pretty good. Up until we get the finish on, then we'll see something.
Yeah.
On the lower grits, were you able to get the dust going into the chute, do you think?
I don't know.
I could see it
It's
going
hard
in.
to- it's hard to see here.
I could see it going in there. Again, at this point, we're really just burnishing. It's almost got a sheen to it already. So 600 grit. You know, usually with flat base projects, I stop at 180. I don't take it much above that anyway. So, but with this, you want as smooth of a surface as you can. All right, and then one last little clean. Yeah, we'll be close. And you know, this also gives you a hint of what the final finish is going to look like. You know, you can see that before it flashes off.
Mm-hmm.
You can see why I like Thuya. I mean,
It's beautiful
it's
wood.
it's a beautiful, especially on the more expensive kits.
So that pen that you do for me, this would be a good choice of
Yeah.
wood.
Yeah, and it turns it turns easy, you know. So, yeah, I happen to have extra Thuya. But all right, so there we are. You can feel the transition. Feel that, Dennis. Let him know if it's
Oh, yeah.
yeah. All right.
Yep.
Now finishes, again, we talked about the CA finish. CA gives you a plastic finish, is basically what it is. And some people don't like that, some people do like that. I think depends upon the, you know, putting an acrylic looking finish onto a wood pen, it's a way to go. I struggled with CA finishes for quite a while. I finally got them down to the point where I felt comfortable about doing them and I'm not having to start all over. Probably the first 5 or 6 pens I ever did, I had to start over 2 or 3 times on the pen. Sand all the CA off and start over. There's a technique to it. You'll see 1,000 YouTube videos on how to do it. It's all about really light touch and being real patient, 10 or 12 coats of the stuff. And then the process for putting the final sheen onto it is a 12-step process of micro mesh, which is here, goes from 1,500 up to 12,000. So you're really making glass is what you really end up doing. If we would have had a little bit more time, I did bring an acrylic blank that we could have done that on. I don't know if we got time afterwards. I mean, we're just, it's up,
Be up to them.
yeah, be up to you guys. So, for this, we're just gonna do a natural finish, what's called a natural finish. So, we sell the Mylands brands. It's great stuff. It's shellac based. So you've got a sanding sealer, which coats into the wood, penetrates into the wood a little bit more than the friction polish. So I like to do it in 2 steps. I like to put the sanding sealer on first. To me, sanding sealer makes wood look like it would have had armor seal applied to it. It just pops the grain. Friction polish will a little bit, but to me, this is a key to really having the grain pop. So the way I do it is I take and pour some into these smaller bottles. You don't like working out of the big ones. As you can see, it separates. You can see that more so on the friction polish. than you can on the sanding sealer, but it still separates a little bit. You know, easier to shake, get it ready to go. So the process of doing that, again, our friendly little blue towels. And I cut these things up to this size when I'm doing work with pens. If I'm doing handles, I may have a larger set, but I find this is about the right size for doing with pens, CA or this finish. Again, it'll kick the speed up probably around 1600. Just put a little bit, you don't need a lot. That's maybe even too much. Let it soak into the towel if you could put too much. Again, since this is shellac based, it's gonna flash off pretty quick. It'll start to get tacky on you. You just go back and forth till you feel it kind of tack up. And then the thing I watch for is I could see a line, a highlight line from the light, and I'm watching that because you can see the sheen change from kind of less sparkly to more sparkly. So it's really quite that simple. As you can see, that's starting to, it'll develop a little bit of sheen even with just the sanding sealer. I like 2 coats. Your mileage can vary depending upon what the wood is and what you like. But as you can see, you put the second coat on, it gets just a little bit better in my estimation. I can start to feel it to tack up just a little bit. Then I'll take clean cloth, again, I'm watching my line. I can see here, you probably have a different line, just to see when the sheen stops changing. Bada bing, bada boom. Sanding sealer done. This is also the time when your warts might show. Nope, looking good. And don't confuse the grain of the wood being circular, you know, because you're actually turning end grain part of the time on some of this stuff, as depends on your blank. So, but it's a natural finish, so you're gonna see some of that grain show through. And again, to me, I like it. I like that. Again, now we'll go to the friction polish. Again, Mylands recommends, you know, about 2,000 RPM to 2,500 RPM. I do the friction or the sanding sealer a little bit lower, but with the friction polish, we'll go ahead and kick it up. You can hear the speed change. And what you're trying to do here is friction polish. You're trying to develop a little bit of heat, because what that's doing is setting the finish. So you'll start to see a sheen come out with that. Again, and I'll find a dry spot of the rag. Again, I'm seeing a little bit of action on that, my shine, what I call the shine bar. And you can see a marked change in the sheen. So again, we'll do one more coat. Dennis, always put the cap back on the bottle.
Always
Right?
put the cap back on.
So I'm surprised you didn't remind me of that.
Always put the cap back
There we
on,
go.
Bob.
Thank you for reminding me. You should be able to feel the heat just through that towel just a little bit. If you feel a lot of it, you're pressing too much. And I think I'll do one more, just do one more coat. Always put the cap back on the bottle.
Always put the cap back on, Bob.
And you can put as many coats of this stuff on as you want. It kind of blends itself together, you know, like shellac does, you know. So, depends on how much time you want to spend on this. But again, several thin coats versus thick coats. There we go. And viola.
I have a question for you, Bob.
Yes, Dennis.
Don't forget to put the cap back on.
It's on.
But, you know, like I was always telling these guys, you're going to route one bowl, route 3. So on pens, do you turn, you always have to turn one at a time, but
Yep.
do you find yourself out in the shop maybe doing 2 or 3 before you're done, or are you okay with just doing one pen and walking out of the shop? You know
So,
what I'm asking?
yeah, that's a good question. It's situational, you know. Sometimes the spirit moves me,
No.
and I just want to make a pen. I saw one of the blanks here, and actually that orange one over there, and I said, my wife would love that. So, got the kit, got the blank, went out in the shop and just popped one. At Christmas time, I'm production mode.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
I made 20 pens at Christmas, and I'll you know, stage them. You know, I'll do all the blanks, then do all the drilling, then do all the tube gluing. You know, just so
I wondered, that's kind of where I
Yeah.
was going with all
yeah,
this.
kind of
good.
situational. Yeah. So,
All right.
my final process. Some people stop at this. My final process is I use carnauba wax. As Richard would say, it's the hardest wax known to man. And any natural finish gonna get a patina as you use it, right? It'll get a little duller, you know, as it goes on, and that's okay. I like carnauba wax because I can almost get a acrylic shine, almost off the stuff, and it really helps protect that pen, you know. So again, this took me a long time to learn how to do this. Light coats, and typically I do no more than 2. So let's go ahead and do this again, about 2,500. And I know that was tough for you to see, but it just laid a very, very thin coat of that wax on top of the finish. And then again, I'm looking at the shine bar and I can kind of see that I'm still kind of removing some of that wax. Now I'm polishing it, I can see the sheen getting a little better. I'm going to do another one just because I know. Very light coat. I've had this bar for 2 years. This stuff lasts forever. So. But to me, the second coat is what really kind of makes the shine go. Some people go 3, but voila.
There you go.
Or as Kelly Bundy used to say, viola. So you can see it's got a nice shine to it. It's a little bit hot. You know, if you touch it, it's going to dull it right away. So I've got white gloves I usually use for assembly. I didn't bring them along when I do natural finishes. So
Bob, question on the finishes. So I'm used to when using finishes, there's dry time, cure time
yep,
in between them, and so you did everything in about 5 minutes.
yep. And the reason for that is because it's shellac based and it just flashes off very quickly. And again, since it's shellac based, it tends to kind of merge with the previous layer as well. So, you know, there'll be a little bit longer cure time that will fully cure, but you can work this stuff right up, you know, on top of each other just like that. So that's our finished blank. I would say it's got a nice satin sheen to it, and I'm good with that. So let's put the doggone thing together. Oh, on the end of the blank, you'll have accumulation of finish. I don't know if you can see it, but sometimes there's just a little accumulation of finish on the blank, and it kind of affects the mating edge. You may or may not see that. And here's another gadget I got. And that just helps me clean off that edge and give a nice crisp edge to it. You can get different sleeves for this as well, but you know, I tend to not to worry about that at this point. So there we go. And it leaves that real nice as well. So okay, assembly, several ways of doing pen assembly. The goal is obviously to press these pieces together as they're it's a press fit. And again, for the lathe beginners here, this one backs out. This one, there's a tool that can use he says just to pop it out. Just make sure you hold on to this. Pop out that Morse taper. You can use a pipe clamp, right, to press these things together. So I started out with a little bar clamp, I should say, you know, about this big, put pads on it, help press it together. We do sell a pen assembly vise that you can use. It's more of an action like that. It's nice. I like those as well. You can pick these up. I think these are from Penn State, or Penn State's got a version of these. Again, my process, I like to do as much as I can on the lathe. So if you notice, this has got a spring-loaded stopper on it, which will become evident as we get close here. So I did forget to mention the instructions, didn't I? Oh my word. So the instructions, again, like I say, they'll let you know what you need in addition to the kit. Tell you what bushings you need, tells you what size of the drill that you need, things like the trimming kit. You know, again, if you do trimming a different way, you don't really need that. The glue, the live tailstock center, again, just depends. Gives you actually pretty good instruction, preparing the blank, turning the blank, you know, all that stuff. But the most important part to me is the assembly instructions, tells you what pieces go where. So, and then this is, I was telling you about the dimensions where people just use calipers to turn their pens, and this is the dimensions that they turn to. In this particular case, both are 0.347 of an inch. The B is the inside diameter that fits over the blank. So again, set that. So we're good here. So with the kit, I'll bring this back over here. Set it here. This lets me know I need to assemble the tip first, and so I'll do that.
What are you going to do with that pen, Bob, when you get it finished?
We're going to give this away.
Oh.
All right. So I'm going to come in on this, but basically this is a friction fit. Okay. So, and this is where I drop things. Tighten up the vise.
So you just pushing on that, right?
Right, now we're just pushing, as you can see it go together. And this is where you see your fit. I typically kind of rotate it. If I do say so myself, that's a pretty nice fit.
Looks good.
All right. Then on the other end, we do this guy. Again, each pen kit's going to be different. I try to take, on this particular, I try to take up the slack as much as I can. See it's going in, nice and even all the way around. There we go. So at this point, we screw the mechanism. This is the twist mechanism, gets screwed into this piece right here. Just tighten it down. This is a press fit over there, and this is why the length of the tube is important, because when you start putting these things together, they may, oh, there's a gap, or it won't go all the way on. So, and this is the twist mechanism. So you got the pen fill, and you may need to kind of fool with that. Oh, let me back that up. So you got the pen in there. Now we got the tip. And look.
Look at that, Bob.
There we go.
There. Ooh. You did it. You did it.
All right.
Give it up for the cameraman.
Yeah.
Couple hours. I was shooting for an hour and a half, but
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I know it seemed like a long process, but you know, that's how it goes when you're trying to talk and do something to save time. But I've never seen it done before either, so it's pretty fascinating to me. I hope the camera work was okay, because I got caught up in watching him from time to time, so.
just a magnetic personality.
Yeah. So let's stop there. Say goodbye, Bob.
Goodbye, Bob.